Okay, Pauline, you're ready to go.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this rather cold April meeting of the Development Committee. I was trying to think of something apposite to say, but all I can say is we've suffered from snow, which is it's been quite testing. Welcome to all the members of the public who are joining us to listen in, and to the members of the public who are registered to speak. Welcome. I have with me today the Assistant Director of Planning, Mr. Rowson. I have our legal advisor, Mr. Doran.
Morning, everybody.
Morning, everybody, and morning. And we have the various other officers who will be either talking or presenting. We have two members of the Democratic Services who will control me and you, the other members here, whilst the session is in play. We have Linda Yarham, who is going to control the length of time speakers are allowed. And we have Matt Stembrovitz. Dear, oh dear, will I ever get that right? I do apologise. I don't do it on purpose. Who is going to tell me who is wishes to speak, and also will control the situation if I fade out, because I'm having trouble with my, yet again, the gremlins have been playing around with my broadband, but I think I've possibly may have sorted that out. As the members know who are on the committee, voting will take place as per normal by roll call, and if you wish to leave the meeting, again, as you do know, please try and do it between the applications, because if you come back when we've started discussions, you can't vote. I don't think there's anything else. If you're not on the committee, would you please mute and turn off your video? And would members on the committee just mute until you're asked or you wish to speak? If you wish to speak, you can certainly try, because you know I'm right old dinosaur, with the little yellow hand. Matt will keep me informed who wishes to speak and in which order. If you can't make that work, just wave at me, and we'll get through it. We have done so far all these months. I'll now pass over to Officer Rowson to see if he has anything to say before we continue.
We have no urgent items today, Chairman, and I have nothing more to report on those matters.
Thank you. We now pass to the agenda. If you please turn to the agenda. Any apologies, Linda, or substitutes?
No, we have no apologies today, but I understand Councillor Cushing wishes to say something.
Yes, Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just got a call from Nigel Pearce, who says that he is struggling to get into the meeting. Apparently his link or password is not working, so I'm assuming that he's talking to Matt about that. So he'll appear whenever he appears. The other thing I'd just like to mention is that I do need to take a very quick phone call, probably last no more than 30 seconds, but when it does, I'll just blank my screen, but it shouldn't stop me participating, if that's okay with you.
Yes. Yes, it depends where we are in the, do you mean if in the meeting itself?
Yeah, I just have one phone call. It shouldn't take less than a minute, I suspect, but I do need to take it, I'm afraid.
Right, yes, I mean, it will be a question of, yes, that's
well, I'll leave it to you randomly. If I do, it may not happen during the meeting, but
no. Well, I've unfortunately discovered that I've left my landline phone in here, which I normally remove. So if you suddenly see me go into mute, it's because the busted thing's gone off. Well, I bet you it will too. Anyway, now the minutes. you should have had a copy of the minutes on the 25th of Feb and the 11th of March sent around with the invitation to join the Zoom meeting. I hope you've read them. And can I have a proposer, please, that we accept the minutes? That's Councillor Brown, and a seconder. Councillor Fisher-Tillett. Could I just see a wave of hands to say that you accept and approve? That's passed, Linda. Thank you. No urgent business, as Philip's told us. Now we are going to just change the order of business. So Walcott, PF/20/1582 will be presented first because that's quite complicated. And then we'll go to Holt, RV/20/2662. So it's Walcott, Holt, and then as printed, Bingham and Ersted. Are we all okay with that? Now, any declarations of interest, this is a pecuniary interest, not non-pecuniary. So you don't have to tell me or declare if you know so and so and so and so. If there's no any pecuniary interest here. No, good, right, we pass swiftly on then to the officer's report. So if you could turn to page 13 on your agenda, this is Walcott, PF/20/1582, and it's being presented by Officer Meacham. If you'd like to carry on, Tracy. Could you, Tracy, we can't hear you, darling. No, can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
That's better, yes.
Sorry about that. I had unmuted it. But not
Yes,
sure what happened there.
No, I don't know. As I said, I think the gremlins are whizzing around the district lately. Would you like to
Anyway,
continue?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. The application is for Ostend Road, Walcott, and it's referenced PF/20/1582 and can be found on pages 13 to 48 of the Gender Report. The application is for the development of 18 dwellings, which includes 16 two-storey affordable dwellings on Plot A to the north of the application site, and 2 4-bed detached houses for market sale on plots B and C to the southeast of the site. I have actually got some plans up, which I can just share my screen so you can see those as I'm speaking. I'm not sure if you can see that.
No, not yet, Tracy.
There, can you see that now?
That's it, well done.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. Yes, so it's 4-bed detached houses for both affordable and market homes. The market homes are on plots B and C to the southeast of the site, as you can see, and the affordable houses are on plot A, which is to the north. There's also associated access, parking, and some landscaping proposed in association with proposed development. The 2 homes for market sale have been verified as a reasonable addition to the scheme to enable the provision of the 16 affordable dwellings. The site is located to the southeast of the settlement of Walcott, situated between the properties of the Ostend Gap Coastal Village to the north, which consists of a mix of bungalows and houses, and a small group of about 10 dwellings to the south, which are semi-detached dwellings and some detached to the south side of Ostend Road. So Walcott is defined within Policy SS1 as being within countryside. I think I made a mistake on a section of the report, and I described it as a coastal village, but it is defined as a countryside location. It's in the coastal plain landscape character area, which is defined as a flat or nearly flat open coastal landscape, which is open, large scale and windswept, with large fields bounded by ditches and or banks, often without a hedge, as described within the North Norfolk Landscape Character Assessment, SPD, which was adopted 2021. The application is not fully policy compliant, but in the whole, the application appears to be acceptable when taking into account the planning balance. The application does not comply with the following policies. So policy HO3, which restricts rural exception sites to no more than 10 dwellings, unless located within 100 metres of a defined settlement. The closest defined settlement would be the coastal service village of Bacton. Policy HO1, as there are only 4 dwellings instead of the 7 required, which would represent 40% of the dwellings, having a floor space of 70 square metres or less, which is designed to address a shortfall of smaller starter homes. Also, there are doubts that the 20% of dwellings required to be adaptable for occupation by the infirm or disabled sufficiently fits this requirement. And also policy CT2, as viability information provided within the application shows that there would not be the financial capability to provide off-site contributions to offset the shortfall in the open space provision required for a development of this size. However, to become policy compliant, the application would need to significantly reduce the amount of affordable housing on the site layout plan. This would not be helpful in addressing the acute need for affordable housing by local people in the Walcott area. Housing Strategy have identified a need for affordable homes within Walcott, pointing out that as of the 9th of November 2020, there were 96 households on the council's housing list with a local connection to Walcott, and of these 62 households were in bands A to C, which are the households with the strongest local connections. So affordable housing in this area is badly needed, and affordable housing sites are slow in coming forward. One of the biggest concerns is from the Highways Authority, who have requested Ostend Road to be widened from any proposed access towards Ostend Gap, or the application should be refused. However, the application would not be viable if required to create additional infrastructure, such as a wider road or connecting footpath, without the loss of a number of affordable dwellings. It is acknowledged that the carriageway reduces the single carriageway width at the point of the proposed access, but this is the case for much of the local countryside away from major routes. The arguments are laid out in pages 38 to 41 of the report. It is worth emphasising, however, that paragraph 109 of the National Planning Policy Framework confirms that only development which would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network will be so severe that refusal on highways ground would be justified. Officers have therefore taken the view that although this would have an impact upon both highway safety and the wider road network, this would not result in an unacceptable impact on highway safety or a severe impact on the wider road network. There have been concerns expressed about the design and the materials we use within the application, as discussed on pages 30 to 32 of the report. The applicant has been bound by the flagship development brief, which has proved limiting to the developer in what could be achieved in design terms. Surrounding properties are traditionally built of brick with tiled roofs. However, the proposed buildings are to be constructed mainly using cement fiberboards and corrugated metal sheet cladding in light and dark greys. Some design improvements have been secured, such as the use of red brick to the ground floor of the market sale dwellings and a red fibre cement roof tile to complement the grey. Conservation Design were not happy with the design of the site, but happy for it to be considered as part of the planning balance. As an additional plus, the dwellings are intended to be built in passive house standards to create low energy usage and therefore homes with a low carbon footprint. This standard will form part of the low carbon energy condition on the decision notice should an approval be forthcoming. The flood risk and drainage considered on pages 43 to 45, and local residents have raised concerns that the field is subject to flooding, while the developer has submitted information to show that there's a network of underground pipework to drain the field, discharging into a pipe, which then discharges into the sea. Soakways have also been proposed. We therefore propose to put a drainage condition on the application to investigate the drainage proposals further to ensure they are adequate. Foul water will discharge into a main sewer, and angling water have confirmed that they have capacity for this development. The site is just outside the coastal erosion zone with a single garden located just within the 100-year epoch. Coastal partnerships therefore have no objections. In addition to this, there have been a sandscaping scheme introduced in 2019, which has sought to increase and improve the height and width of beaches through the addition of additional sand deposited on the beaches of Bacton Gas Terminal, Bacton and Walcott, which is hoped will slow down the rate of erosion. There have been a number of public objections, the residents of Ostend Gap in particular being against the development. Issues have been far-ranging, disputing the submitted ecological appraisal and whether the site is sustainable and so on. It is recognised that this proposal does represent a departure from the development plan, and officers particularly recognise the highway safety concerns raised by the Highways Department and other policy conflicts which I've identified within the report. However, it is felt that delivery of affordable housing is in the wider public interest and is a corporate priority as detailed throughout the North Norfolk Core Strategy. The issue of affordable housing therefore attracts substantial weight in favour of the proposal, and in the planning balance attracts sufficient weight to justify departure from the development plan. We therefore recommend approval, subject to the satisfactory completion of an S106 planning obligation, which will ensure the provision of 16 affordable dwellings for social rent, the provision of amenity green space within the site, as well as the visitor impact mitigation contributions, which total £3,690, and which will help protect nearby nature conservation features within the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Very good report.
Thank you.
And your written report was very good as well, which I said to you the other day. Now, anybody tipped up from the local parish, Linda? Could you take your, Tracy, can you take your map off, please, so I can see the... No, you've gone on mute.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find out how to do that, but the whole thing has gone very small on my screen and I can't see how I do it.
Matt,
revert it
can you
back.
do it,
Yeah.
please, darling? Yes. That's it.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Matt. Now, Linda, anybody from the local parish since we spoke on Tuesday?
No, we have nobody from the parish council. We have no speakers on this at all, but the applicant is present if there's any questions.
Right. There's no objecting speaker. Mr. Warren is here and he won't speak, but as Linda has said, he's willing to answer any questions. I now go to local member, Councillor Stockton. You have 5 minutes, Clive.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't think I'll need 5 minutes. Local exception sites are the only mechanism we have for providing affordable housing for local people in our rural communities. It was introduced in the mid-2000s after something of a battle with the ministry then responsible because the legal basis was quite difficult, but we managed to get the local exception site policy through. There is no question that if we are to keep our local communities relatively local and give opportunities to local people, that we have to take advantage of exception sites. They're allocated on the basis of local connection on a cascade from the highest which is being born there, etc. I think the pressure, the indications are that the pressure on our coastal communities now is such that a lot of people, given the events of the last 14 months, are looking to move out of cities, looking to have a more peaceful life with the connections of the internet, subject to the vagaries we all put up with. It means people can work from home. So the pressure is to for people to move into the area, which is no bad thing, but it does mean that the pressure on local housing for local people will only increase in the near future. So I think it is essential that wherever possible, we approve exception sites. Now, I know this one has got various problems in terms of actually fulfilling all the planning requirements to the letter, but as Tracy said, I do believe that the pressure to provide local housing for local people overrides that in this case, and I therefore would propose that we go along with the officer's recommendations to approve this site subject to the appropriate conditions which are listed in the paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Well, we'll come to the proposals, etc. a bit later. Now, anybody wish to speak on this, please? I can't see any little, right, there's Angie and then Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And can I thank Tracy in particular for highlighting the two things that caused me most concern. Obviously, the potential for flooding. As soon as I heard Walcott, Ostend, my heart sank, and I immediately contacted my coastal team. But they are relatively relaxed. As you see from the report, it's just a small portion of garden and amenity land that is actually in the flood zone. And of course, the Environment Agency flood maps now are quite seriously out of date, and we're working through CPE to actually try and get them to update them so they're a bit more relevant. And of course, as Tracy highlighted, nearly 2 years ago now, we started our sandscaping scheme to protect Bacton Gas Terminal, the villages of Bacton and Walcott, and it does extend right the way down to Ostend. So I am relaxed that there will be no concern in respect of flooding from the sea. The other thing is, of course, as you all know, I'm very keen on our landscape, being Vice Chairman of the Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty Group. And again, I'd like to draw members' attention to the bottom of page 20 and hope that the conditions to mitigate the impact can be included in any approval. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Angie. And I would just point out, when I was talking with Councillor Stockton, he actually mentioned that there have been new deposits of sand at the base of the cliffs at Haysborough, I think, as well as going along Walcott. So that's tremendous news. I now go to Councillor Heinrich.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I fully support what Clive has said, that we really do have a need for affordable homes in our coastal villages, and Walcott is absolutely no exception to this. I mean, the site's not ideal. The design to some people is not ideal, but these houses will meet a local need. Yeah, there's some concerns expressed. I mean, the 100-year flood risk. I walked that beach last week. It's very different from what it was even 3 years ago. There's sand now part of the base of the cliffs. The only sign of cliff collapse was a couple of small areas of slumping due to surface water penetration. It is very different from what it has been. And I grew up and fished that coast as a teenager, so I've known it a very long time. Highways, yeah, Ostend Road is narrow, but I think we're only looking at a possible problem at the peak of the holiday season, not the rest of the year. You know, not all those houses around Ostend Gap are occupied full time, so you can't base it on the usual 2 or 3 cars per household. I don't think that's a problem. In terms of design, if we look at the long history of this area, from 20s holiday shacks through the prefabs that went up during the 1950s to the holiday camp that was there, part of it, there is such a mishmash hidden under modern brick cladding and other things that this particular design almost reflects the history of the place. It might look out of place to somebody who's recently moved in, but it's not. It's just part of that long history of development of this sort of coastal location. So I have no problem with it. Our ultimate concern has to be to get this affordable housing, and I'm happy to second the recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We see many applications come before us at this committee where the percentage of affordable housing has not been met, where viability has been challenged. and we end up with a reduced number of affordable housing. So how refreshing it is to see an application where we get 16 affordable units out of 18. It's a stated aim, as we all know, of the corporate plan, that we need to provide local housing for local need. And I am quite happy to support this application, notwithstanding that it is not fully policy compliant, but I would like to thank the officer for a very thorough and well presented report, which explains the importance of policy and the material considerations of affordable housing to rebut the shortcomings of non-complying with policy. I'd just like to say that this is perhaps not widely appreciated, but I was on a Rural Services Network presentation recently where one affordable house contributes, it's estimated on a cost benefit analysis, £140,000 to the local economy. So that being the case, if we multiply this up, then this development potentially will contribute £2.24 million to the local economy if this development is built out. So on that basis, I am quite happy to support the application of the officer's recommendation. I would just like to ask Mr. Warren, the applicant, whether we have any clarity on the method of heating that's proposed in these units, which I think is mentioned as being in some doubt on page 17 of the officer's report, Madam Chairman. Thank you very much.
Matt, can we please bring in Mr. Warren? Good morning, Mr. Warren.
Hi, good morning. Just to clarify on that point, we'll be either using a ground source heat array, which is a shared array where we dig a few boreholes and then use small ground source heat pumps within the units. Unfortunately, the government has removed the renewable heat incentive from March of this year. So whether that is affordable or not, we'll have to look at that. But alternatively, we'll be using an air source heat pump if we can't use the ground source heating.
Right. Is that all right, Andrew?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Warren.
You're welcome.
Mr. Warren, I just was a little concerned because of the noise factor with the air source heat pumps. Do you know what level it is? Is it likely to be intrusive on each of the houses or any of the local houses around?
No, the position of the air source heat pumps will be about 5 or 6 meters away from the house normally. So we probably place them near the parking areas. As to neighbours, we're at least 21 meters away from each house to the north. So you wouldn't hear anything on that. It'll be less than an air conditioning unit normally. So you wouldn't hear it from more than 10 meters away, if that, outside.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you'd like to just stay with us, because in case somebody else wishes to ask you any questions. Councillor Yassimi.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, Andreas, we can.
Yes, that's good. Yes, thank you for the officer for an excellent report on this. I would like to agree with Councillor Clive Stockton about what he says on his very important points. The issue I would have had would have been about the flooding issue, but Angie has done her homework as usual, and she's underlined that that will be okay. Apart from that, I think the affordable housing is needed, and I'll keep it short and sweet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Richard, Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would like to say that I'm so pleased to see a design for passive housing being put forward in North Norfolk. I mean, not only is this important that they are affordable, I think it's very important that people live in affordable houses don't suffer extensive bills in terms of fuel and It means it's cheaper and better to live. And I just commend the developer for bringing this forward, and it's very welcome in North Norfolk. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mancini-Boyle, I know what you're going to say before we start.
Let me guess, Madam Chair. As you can imagine, when I saw this, the amount of affordable houses, frankly, I nearly fell off my chair. So refreshing. And Councillor Brown raised the point about the heat source pumps, which, as you know, I'm very keen on. I actually did a bit of homework yesterday on this, surprisingly. And the average noise from a heat source pump is about 40 to 50 decibels. An average gas boiler is about 40 decibels. Now, you have to bear in mind, obviously, that gas boilers are inside the house, so you won't hear them. But the fact that they're so far apart, and they're not always running at high speed, and they get noisier the more use you have of them. So if in the summer they're hardly ever used, they're very, very quiet. And I actually even looked into new designs and developments, and they're now becoming less noisy. And of course, as we all know, in 2026, you will no longer be able to buy a gas boiler. So I'm really, really pleased to see this type of heating on this particular application. Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that what you thought I was going to say?
Yes, and the passive building as well. Yes.
Madam Chair, that's an aspiration, passive building.
There we are. But Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Most of what I was going to say has been said. I'm very supportive of this application, particularly pleased to see the contribution to renewable energy schemes. But one thing I'd like to ask the applicant, if he's still here, is why they didn't consider any solar panels on the roof. It's great that we've got renewable energy heat sources, but just thought it'd be great for the occupants if they could keep their energy bills down by producing their own electricity too.
Mr. Warren, yes, this is something that we are pursuing in North Norfolk quite heavily now, the use of solar panels. So I am a little bit surprised myself that they're not included in your extremely good scheme.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, there are only so many things we can pay for without me losing a lot of money. The houses do have a south-facing pitched roof, and we made sure that the roofs are pitched at an angle that you can future-proof, and if the housing association wanted to put solar panels within that. But let me just clarify, with the passive house, the only energy that you'll be using is electricity for obviously running the house. There's absolutely no heating within the house at all. There's no heating system, maybe one towel rail. All the heating will be generated by solar gain. The actual air source heat pump won't be running all that much, because even during the winter, because there'll be no need or demand for a heating system within there. But as to solar panels, they are future-proofed. Once the UK gets somewhere where we can actually generate enough sunshine, being an Antipodean, there's never enough sunshine. Then yes, the housing association can install those at a later date.
Well, I must say that I took a long time looking at this particular application, as I know my other fellow members do as well, and I am fully aware of the restraints that you have to build within because of the costing from flagship, and I think you've done well under the circumstances, so thank you. Now, Clive, do you wish still to be the proposer for this, for the approval?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'm quite happy to be the proposer.
So if we could now please, we have a seconder in Councillor Heinrich. This is to accept on page 47 the recommendation to approve this application with the various conditions as stated between page 47 and 48. So I think we now go to you, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just go through the roll calls. So
yes,
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Cushing.
4.
Councillor Fisher,
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett,
4.
Councillor Fredericks,
4.
Councillor Grave-Jones,
4.
Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Kershaw,
4.
Councillor Lloyd,
4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle,
4.
Councillor Stockton,
4.
Councillor Varley,
4.
and Councillor Yassimi. Sorry, Andreas, I
Andreas.
didn't catch that.
Oh, 4.
Okay, that's all in favour.
Thank you. That's passed, Mr. Warren, and I look forward to seeing them when I go past on my way to the seafront at Walcott.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
again, thank you, Tracy Meacham, for doing an exceptional job on this one as well.
She did, because it was difficult.
Let's have a good
Thank
day,
you.
folks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Right, now we now pass to page 3, which is Holt RV stroke 20 stroke 2662. And Officer Rowson is presenting this one.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members of the public. The application is a Section 73 application, which seeks variation of Condition 1 relating to plans and deletion of Condition 2 relating to reserve matters under the Planning Permission 15/804 and seeks to vary house types, external finishes, and provides corresponding changes to layout and landscape. It relates to Planning Permission 15/0774 also. The site is land to the east of 42 Cly Road at Holt. The officer presentation has been circulated ahead of the meeting. I will take it as read that members have reviewed that presentation, but would be pleased to answer any questions relating to the presentation within our debate session, which will follow this presentation. The site comprises 2 parcels of agricultural land to the north of the Holt allotments. It lays to the west of residential development on Woodfield Road and to the east of ribbon development along Cly Road. There is a belt of pine trees and other trees subject to a tree preservation order along the northern site boundary. Cly Road is to the west, Peacock Lane terminates to the south of the site, and Woodfield Road terminates to the northeast. Hopefully, members, that helps you to identify where the site is. The proposals seek to vary plans provided under the previous applications mentioned earlier. They will provide 83 homes. Amongst the changes, there are variations to house types, materials, and minor variations to landscape and layout. The proposals are inclusive of 12 affordable homes. We have 10 social rented homes and 2 shared ownership homes. The proposals will be supported by a Section 106, which is submitted in draft form to secure those affordable homes. The public road layout and access points remain as previously approved. This is a local plan allocated site. It has a series of historic permissions, which you can see in the officer's report. The conditions have been discharged on those historic permissions. There is an extant planning permission which can be built out. As a Section 73 proposal, we are dealing with limited variations to those historic permissions, and so this permission effectively stands on the shoulders of those historic extant permissions. The development offers a similar layout to that has been previously proposed. Members, I hope that you've seen the comparative layout, which overlays the extant permission against the proposed layout, and you can see with some clarity the similarity between the 2 proposals. The matters of local concern have related to lockable gates on a private access. You will see in the report that those lockable gates themselves will be within the control of the private property owner that sits adjacent to the site. There were some concerns from the Town Council about the possibility of providing a bus link, a bus gate across the site, linking from east to west, west to east. Unfortunately, the limitations of the historic layout and permissions, together with concerns that have been previously expressed from the County Council highway engineers, prevent this from being delivered. There will be footpath and cycle linkages across that emergency link, which you can see in the centre of the site. I think, members, it is impossible to hide our collective disappointment at the loss of the affordable homes that would have been provided under the historic planning permissions. This is documented in the report, and I'm sure members will be well aware of presentations to overview and scrutiny and discussions that have been held in the local media on this matter. We must, however, address the matters that are in front of us today. We can only assess those matters in terms of the potential benefits that are deliverable under this revised scheme. And it is very clear to me, as your presenting officer today, that the current scheme offers 12 affordable homes against a position where the developer could realistically develop out with no affordable homes being delivered. I believe the scheme offers some betterments in simplifications of design and certainly will retain good quality detailing and traditional materials. All other matters of concern, as you can see in the report, are effectively mitigated. So, members, I see a scheme which will deliver 12 affordable homes. I see a scheme which will deliver 83 new homes in our district. That will help to move towards the delivery of our housing targets. It will help to deliver new homes bonuses. I see a site which was allocated in a long-standing local plan, a site that has historic permissions which were not built out. We are in a position where a degree of pragmatism is required. And on that basis, you will see that the officer report from this application is to recommend approval subject to the completion of the Section 106 and appropriately worded conditions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Ransom. I now go to Linda. Anybody tipped up from local parish, local town council?
No, Madam Chairman, we have nobody from the Town Council and no objectors, but we have Mr. James Nichols here who is supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nichols, are you here? Yes.
I am indeed, yes.
Do you wish to speak?
Yes, please.
Right. Okay, if you will continue. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Nichols.
Thank you. I'm James Nichols, Commercial Director for Norfolk Homes Limited. I don't propose to reiterate the full planning history of the site as it's covered in full in the committee report. Suffice to say, however, following the exhausting planning process that culminated in the High Court in summer 2020, Justice Holgate handed down the judgment confirming that there exists an extant planning permission from 2015, which has been lawfully commenced and that is not bound by any Section 106 agreement, meaning that no affordable housing is required to be provided. Based in Sheringham, Norfolk Homes have over a 35-year history of delivering much needed homes across the district of North Norfolk. My fellow directors and I have a responsibility to the shareholders to make sure that Norfolk Homes continues to successfully provide both jobs and houses to the people of North Norfolk and the wider area. Prior to pursuing proceedings in the High Court, we did table a compromise position to NNDC to offer a percentage of affordable housing on the site. This offer was not taken up at the time. Following receipt of the judgment, however, we once again discussed whether we should table a compromise or whether we should simply build out the extant consent and deliver no affordable dwellings. We agreed once again to table a compromise proposition in the form of the Section 73 application that you're presiding over today. This application seeks to amend the lawfully commenced 2015 permission for 83 homes, primarily to provide 12 affordable dwellings. The housing market and industry has continued to evolve since 2015. And whilst proposing the revised affordable housing provision, we've also taken the opportunity to respond to changes in policy, design, energy efficiency standards, and the needs and demands of house buyers and purchasers. In this regard, the Section 73 application proposes small elements of change to the layout, house designs, external materials, landscaping, as well as proposing additional energy efficiency in the form of roof integrated PV panels to 21 of the dwellings. We also committed to offering 2 of the open market dwellings to Holt Housing Society at 80% of the open market value. If this offer is taken up, it will in effect take the number of affordable dwellings to 14. You will note the overwhelming support, including from the Town Council and the District Council's officers. There is no reduction in the quality of the improved scheme, and indeed the officer concludes that it's more appropriate now in context. In summary, this substitute application seeks to improve upon the extant consent in terms of design, energy efficiency, and of course in providing 12 affordable homes that would not otherwise be provided. This represents significant material consideration in the determination of this application. Finally, given the elapsed time, we as a company have simply got to move this site forward in build terms. As such, in the event that this application is not approved by members this morning, we will simply have to build out the extant consent. This is not a threat, it is simply the reality to safeguard the future of both the company and our employees. Thank you very much. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. I now go to our local member, who is Councillor Perry-Warnes. Georgie, you have for 5 minutes, my love.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's disappointing that Holt Town Council's request to accommodate the hopper bus to serve the community on a circular route is not possible. I'm also concerned that 2 of the proposed affordable homes being offered fall below the nationally described space standard of 70 square metres. I ask the applicant to consider the impact of living in such a restricted space and to rethink. As we have heard, the terms of the historic Section 106 agreement was successfully challenged by the applicant in the High Court, and Norfolk Homes no longer have a legal obligation to provide any affordable homes for this development. They have, however, agreed to provide 12 affordable homes as a gesture of goodwill, which is appreciated. I therefore thank them for that and support the application. I must make the point, though, that the people of Holt need affordable homes much more than they need market housing. And the loss of up to 25 affordable homes has caused a huge amount of despair and upset in the community. There exists a moral imperative alongside any legal one. And it is a shame that the outcome of the legal disagreement between North Norfolk District Council and Norfolk Homes is that those most in need have lost out through no fault of their own. In my opinion, the developers' increased profits will be at their expense. It has been a sorry business, which doesn't seem right because it isn't right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry-Warnes. Now, are there any members on the committee who wish to speak? I can't see any little hands. Yes, Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think really, despite all the reservations that have been expressed to my colleagues, we have to bring this saga to an end now. We know it can be built out as the original permission. No rights or wrongs of that have been decided by litigation. We can't argue with it now. We are at least getting some social housing here. Not enough, I fully accept. There have been improvements in design. I don't particularly like mock Georgian. We get far too much of that in the area, but at least they're going to be more energy efficient. It's a compromise. At times we have to compromise. And yeah, there's all sorts of things that we could improve, but either we get these houses or we don't. And I think we just have to accept the situation is as it is. And I propose acceptance of the officer recommendation. Thank you.
I'll put you down as proposer then, Councillor Heinrich, for acceptance. Councillor Fredericks, you wish to speak?
Unsurprisingly, Madam Chair, you probably know what I'm going to say as well. And I'd like to echo the thoughts of Georgie Perry on this as well. In light of the last application that we looked at, that it's the other way round, isn't it? That the developer's trying to do the right thing and funding it with 2 houses. This sits really uncomfortably with me, as you would expect, because we need affordable social rented housing. And I don't like the tone that that, well, you know, we won't do it then. I don't like that sort of tone. And Norfolk Homes have a lot of houses in Norfolk, and I applaud them for that. But yeah, I'm quite undecided on this because of the downgrading. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I will just say we are where we are with this, sadly, and I would just say that I don't think we have any other decision to make than allow this to go through.
Thank you, Councillor Fisher. Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't want to revisit the history. It's a sad history, but I would like to put on record my thanks for Philip Rowson pursuing this and actually getting some affordable houses out of what seemed to be a disastrous situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Councillor Yassimi.
Yes. I'd like to thank Councillor Rowson for his excellent report. I'm glad that the gate has been addressed and explained. The bus lane, well, we've got the footpath and the cycle, and we do need affordable homes under the conditions of 106, of course, and all these things that have been met. But I would just like to emphasise and underline Councillor Georgina Perry-Warren's empathy on the topic. It is important, even though we have to go by planning, structure, and what is given to us. Empathy is a very important thing, and I've noted it.
Thank you, Councillor Yassimi. Does anybody else wish to speak? I can't see any other hands. Now we have a proposer to accept the officer's recommendation for approval as stated on pages 11 and 12. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Fisher seconds this. We now go to the vote. Matt, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Brown.
With a heavy heart, 4.
Councillor Cushing.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
4.
Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
4.
Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Kershaw.
4.
Councillor Lloyd.
Also with a heavy heart, 4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
4.
Councillor Stockton.
Third heavy heart, 4.
Councillor Varley.
It's another heavy heart, 4.
And Councillor Yassimi.
4.
It's all in favour.
Thank you. That has been passed. So thank you to Mr. Nichols for presenting on that one. You have your approval. We now go to page 49, which is Binham PF/20/1954. And I think, Daryl, are you presenting on this one?
Yes, Madam Chair, yes.
Officer, yes. So Officer Daryl Watson will now present.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is Binham application reference PF 20/1954. It's item 9, starting on page 49 of the agenda. The application is for a detached dwelling on land to the west of 49 Priory Crescent, Binham. The site sits to the rear of 49 and 51 Priory Crescent and was previously occupied by garages serving properties on Priory Crescent, an existing access off it, which would serve the development now. There is agricultural land to the west with a public footpath running adjacent to the boundary with the site. Priory Crescent itself comprises pairs of semi-detached houses and bungalows. The parish council support the application and no representations have been received. There has been a previous application for a dwelling on this site which was withdrawn, and compared to what was proposed then, the dwelling now has been reduced in height and scale. I'd also draw your attention to the fact that the soft landscaping plan shown in the presentation pack shows the footprint of the dwelling previously proposed, not the current proposal, just for the avoidance of any doubt. So turning to the main issues, with regard to principle, the site is within the area designated as countryside under policy SS1 of the adopted North Norfolk Core Strategy. Policy SS2 lists the types of development that can be acceptable in this area, but market housing, as is proposed in this case, is not one of them. One of the purposes of these policies is to ensure more sustainable patterns of development, as is explained in the report. Whilst Binham has some limited facilities, in order to access a full range of basic services, the occupiers of the dwelling would be dependent on travel by the car. The proposal would therefore not be sustainable development and contrary to policies SS1 and SS2, which appeal decisions have confirmed are consistent with the National Planning Policy Framework. The other issue is the effect on the character and appearance of the area. This is a backland site which would not reflect the strong regular pattern of development in the vicinity. Other than domestic outbuildings, there is no development typed up to the boundary with the footpath that runs adjacent to the west boundary of the site. Despite the landscaping proposed, it is considered the development would not readily assimilate into the prevailing grain of the area. The site is also within the Binham Conservation Area. Again, because the proposal would not reflect the distinctive form and character of this part of it and would appear as an incompatible add-on, it would result in harm to the conservation area. Whilst it's acknowledged that this harm would be less than substantial, as is required by paragraph 196 of the NPPF, this harm has to be weighed against any public benefits of the proposal. In this case, officers consider there are none of any of such weight which would outweigh this harm. So in summary, the recommendation is therefore for refusal for the reasons set out on page 56 of the agenda. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Officer Watson. Now, I have a speaker from the local parish council, Mrs. Alford. You have 3 minutes, Mrs. Alford, from the time that you start speaking.
Thank you for permitting Binham Parish Council to comment on this application. We wish to reaffirm that as a parish council, we're supportive of the current application to build a property on this site. As already has been stated, this site was formerly used as a residential garage parking for the surrounding residential homes within Priory Crescent. Approximately 4 years ago, prior to the sale of the site, the garages and the land itself had deteriorated into a poor maintained state with dilapidated garage buildings and undergrowth, which proved a bit of an eyesore when viewed on the public footpath. Priory Crescent itself was built in the 1960s to provide affordable local authority housing and consists of semi-detached houses and bungalows. And a number of the houses and bungalows in recent years have been sold into private ownership. To the south of this site, we've recently seen the development of 27 new build premises consisting of 10 affordable houses, 4 shared and 13 open market. 6 of these are abutting the footpath and they have small gardens and currently are quite visible from the footpath and will remain so until such time as the new hedgerow planting establishes itself in a few years. The site was owned by Victory Housing, who decided to put it to auction, although a small site situated behind the rear gardens of numbers 49 and 51 and the footpath We as a parish council had expected that following the sale, an application would be made to build a residential property on the site. And the applicants have already made an investment in the site by erecting a cast iron fence and cleared and planted on the site to improve its previous unkept appearance. The parish council did not support the previous withdrawn planning application, as we felt primarily that the design was not in keeping at all with the character of the brick and flint buildings of the conservation area and was too large for the site. Having reviewed the current application and in terms of its compatibility with neighbouring uses, we considered we were seeing an entirely different proposal which took on board our previous concerns about designing a residential building that would enhance the vacant site and form at glance a complementary style to other nearby 18th century converted farm buildings of the former Abbey House complex, which are visible at the north end of the footpath. There's also the Garden and Chequers Public House and Bilham Village Hall. We recognise there are some challenges with the build in terms of previously made access entrance width, but we understand that the applicant has spoken to the neighbours about his plans and has indeed ensured his planting programme does not impede in any way over their right of way of the land, and we have received no further representations from those neighbours. Given that Binham's a conservation village, the parish council is very aware of the preservation requirements and limits of development in the countryside. As this site was housing residential garages—
3 minutes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mrs. Alford.
That's okay.
I think we've got the majority of your speech there, with your presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any objecting speaker, Linda?
No, we have no objectors, but we have Mr. Cobbold here as supporting.
Mr. Cobbold,
Good morning.
Good morning. Do you wish to speak?
If I may, please.
Yes, 3 minutes from the time you start.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to you and to those on the internet. This should come in around 2.5 minutes, I hope. My wife and I would like to thank Binham Parish Council and everyone here gathered for considering our proposal. Policy arguments can evidently be deployed for and against. Harming a heritage asset seems a puzzling argument. 30 new homes in Binham's conservation area in recent years must speak to the possibility of a 31st, and no mention was made of any such showstopper when we asked for pre-application advice. The de-emphasis of emerging plan is also curious. It's been published in draft form for a couple of years and calls for brownfields, identifying Binham for small growth because of its services, not its paucity of services, and speaking plainly about the importance of tourism to the district local economy. We are trying to build a holiday cottage on brownfield in Binham. Even without MPPF paragraphs 47 to 50, which inhibit prematurity arguments, why assert that a brownfield is countryside after publishing a policy intention to the contrary? Sustainability is, of course, very important. Beg my pardon, I need to scroll down on my screen. It was among reasons this committee gave to approve a brownfield in Binham last year. And I think arguments about transport are starting to get outflanked by the Green Revolution and people wanting to take care of themselves and the planet in new ways. Beyond policy intrigues, the combined Brexit and climate change agendas can make a case in favour of nourishing domestic tourism, even with the pandemic, even without the pandemic staycation. For this year, cottages in North Norfolk, so far as I can tell, were fully booked by the end of February. Last year, we left it too late, couldn't get anything, and pretty similar in 2019. I also think that the season is typically lengthening for various reasons, and I think that's important for hospitality and leisure businesses, including Binham's own pub, shop and cafe. My last point, we wonder how it best serves to leave the site empty. Yes, it has constraints, but at 0.16 of an acre, it is a capable size. We can't think of a more positive prints in terms of a use for the ugly duckling land, and the parish generously support that vision. Evidently, the housing trust which chose to auction the land saw no duty to retain it for existing residents or for an extra affordable home or two. A holiday cottage will bring some modest economic benefit, and in this case additively, rather than by wresting a second home from a would-be local. However you vote today, we shall invigorate our commitment to our vision. We love the site, the village amenity, and the people that we already call friends and neighbours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cobbold. I now go to Councillor Kershaw. who is the local member. You have 5 minutes, Richard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a finely balanced application. The applicant had pre-app advice in April 2019, submitted an application in 2019, which was withdrawn in January 2020. The applicant has since worked with conservation design officers to try and resolve the issues that they raised. On page 51 of the agenda, it's clear that these efforts have been recognised. And in summary, the design and conservation officer states, it has to be said that this is a development that does not sit comfortably from conservation and design perspective. Equally, however, it is acknowledged that the heritage grounds for refusals are nowhere near as strong as they were previously. The landscape officer has mentioned light spill, but also that this latest design has addressed these issues through a reduction in glazed areas and the use of louvers. Let's be clear, this is a modest 1-bedroom, thoughtfully designed dwelling, reusing older materials set behind a row of houses in Priory Crescent that do not have any particular architectural or historic merit, in the words of officers. I cannot see how the construction of this modest 1-bedroom building will affect the dark skies surrounding this part of Binham. I can also not see how replacing 6 unsightly garages with 1 carefully designed dwelling would cause harm in this location. The applicant has the full support of the Parish Council, as we've already heard, and there have been no objections to this application. The officers themselves conclude on page 56 that it is recognised that there would be limited public gain resulting from the redevelopment of this site. In summary, I believe the applicant has tried to comply with the officer's request throughout. It's a very modest building, which I feel not to be harmful in this location. As a result, I will be voting against the officer's recommendation and would ask that officers re-engage with the applicant to find a resolution. I do not feel that this is a backland development per se. I find that this is a small site boundaried by a public footpath and would not be at all offensive. And I cannot see why we would vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. And has anybody wish to speak? Councillor Fisher, have you got your light on? No. Okay, so we'll go Councillor Gerard, Mancini Boyle, then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I completely agree. This is not a massive building. And also, I have to say, it starts to concern me these days with the COVID-19, the officers are citing the use of cars and what have you. I haven't used my car for the best part of 6 months. So I wonder if the Officer Watson takes this into account, bearing in mind that most usage of cars nowadays is very, very limited. Is that something that you consider with this application? Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Gerard,
pretty much. Yeah,
Gerard,
yeah.
Officer Watson merely delivered this. The actual application appraisal was done by Officer Starling, who doesn't present.
Right.
But so
Yeah.
I just don't want to stab poor old Daryl in the back when it's not his.
I didn't mean to. It's just a point I think I should raise, that people aren't using the cars as much as they do, and the fact that every single application you seem to see these days, they're just citing the poor old car, And in fact, you have to bear in mind a lot of people are driving electric as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's perfectly all right. I think we said before in our pre-meeting we should be going back to a horse and cart, possibly the way we're going. Anyway, that's just a thought thrown in. Councillor Brown, and then Officer Rowson wishes to come in. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to support the previous contributors. I think the Parish Council have put forward a very good case, as has Councillor Kershaw. I do question our definition of the countryside. This site clearly, from an aerial view, falls within the village settlement. And for that reason, and also because it does have quasi brownfield status as a site, and because it is an infill development, and because we have passed schemes, and there's one in particular in Clyde that I can think of, which is quite infamous, for properties which are not, as it were, in keeping with the buildings immediately adjacent to them. I do have to question the validity of that argument on the part of the officers for refusing this application. So, Madam Chair, I would like to recommend that we do not accept the officer's recommendation and that we move to approve this particular development. Thank you.
Thank you for, let me just point out to members that we have to vote on the recommendation as it's put forward, first of all. Okay. Officer Rowson, do you wish to speak before I introduce the other members who wish to speak?
Through you, Chairman, I'll be in the guise of answering questions that have been raised. So if that would be helpful for members, I'll be very happy to do that.
Right. Okay. So I'll go now to Councillor Heinrich. Oh, I've had you. You've got your little light still on, Paul. I'm so sorry.
I haven't spoken yet, Chairman.
Oh, right.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very much sitting on the fence on this one. I mean, what we've had several applications recently in Binham, and they've all been complex. I think this one is much the same. I mean, what we've got is basically backland development right on the rural edge of the village, but with a building that is going to significantly improve on the landscape, given that it's a higher quality than those around it. We could argue that it's not about repurposing an existing building. It is effectively a new development. It's not on the footprint of anything that's been there previously or conversion of something else. But we have the parish in favour. Take on board what Councillor Kershaw has said. And I think overall, the balance has to fall in favour of acceptance. So I can't support the officer recommendation on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Cushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just some brief remarks, really. I want to follow up some of the points that I think Councillor Brown made, which I think are very valid indeed, and that's actually what we actually define as being countryside. Where we have infill plots, to me, countryside is open fields, woods, trees, etc. I can't really see how, looking at the aerial photograph, having a reasonable idea of actually where it is, it's not too far away from where I am, that it actually is countryside. I take on board the point made by the applicant as well, that I think there will be some economic benefit to our area. So on that basis, I also will vote against the officer recommendation on this.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak before I pass to, well, we're going to go to Philip first and then to Darryl, I think, wants to speak. Which way do you want to do it, Philip?
If I can speak first, Chairman, that would be helpful. To answer the questions raised by members, the matter of countryside is not necessarily open countryside with frolicking sheep. That is a bucolic analysis of what countryside is. Planning policy is very clear. We start with settlement hierarchy and we work our way across the district on the basis of sustainability analysis. And I have to say, the sustainability analysis in terms of policy is not changed by COVID-19. We are still considering the basis of sustainability in terms of access to alternative means of transport and local services and facilities. So please, when you make your decision today, be guided by all of the training that you've had on sustainability, be guided by all of the decisions that you've made and all of the appeals that we have defended successfully on sustainability. Countryside in planning terms, for the benefit of this development committee, is defined by your local plan. Our local plan is the historic local plan. It isn't the emerging local plan. You will have heard me previously, and I'm sorry to remind you again today, you'll have heard me previously say the emerging plan currently carries limited, if any, weight. So I need to speak at this point to answer those questions relating to COVID and car use. I regret our guidance on sustainability remains the same, just to recap on that. And this is classified as a countryside site within our existing core strategy and local plan. And the officer's analysis is on the basis of that existing local plan. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Rowson. Officer Watson, you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Philip has said one of the things that I was going to say, but during the debate, I've checked the application file online. The actual application form states the proposal is for a new dwelling, so, but the design and access statement refers to it being holiday accommodation. From what the applicant said, it's clearly for holiday accommodation, so we need to make sure we consider this against policy EC7 as well. If I can just briefly outline what that says. That relates to the location of new tourism development. And then it says proposals for new build unserviced holiday accommodation in the countryside, which this would be, will be treated as though they're permanent residential dwellings and will not be permitted for similar reasons as new dwellings are not permitted. So I just wanted to clarify that point with the Chair and make sure that we are considering against policy EC7 as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Officer Watson. I had noted when Mr. Cobbold was giving his little introduction that it is holiday accommodation, which was not noted in the application presentation as we received it. Now, I need to have, is there anyone proposing to accept the officer's recommendation, considering the advice we've had from officers for refusal on the grounds as stated on page 56 of your agenda? Is anybody prepared to propose that we accept that? Councillor Fisher is proposing that we accept the officer's recommendation to refuse this. Anybody seconding? Councillor Fisher seconding. And I just point out that we need to be very careful when, yes, thank you, Councillor Fisher, I've put you down. We have to be careful when we consider any drift from the local plan and the SS1 and SS2 and development in the countryside. So can we now go to the vote, Matt?
Yeah, I just see Richard Kershaw has a hand raised.
Oh, do you know, he keeps doing that to me because he's in the corner. He puts a sneaky hand up. Yes, Richard, before we go to the vote.
Sorry, it's just we keep coming across this, and it seems weighted to me that we've just discussed a large site which was against policy brought by the officer, and that's then not questioned. We are now moving against policy, and you always get the backlash, and it's just in terms of balance. I would just like to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Councillor Kershaw. Can I just point out that if the proposal that we accepted at Walcott had been ordinary market housing or holiday accommodation, that would not have been accepted. It was accepted because it was an exception site. And as I said, it was a difficult one. Anyway, I appreciate your comments, Richard. Can we go to the vote, please?
Okay, yeah. Councillor Brown?
Against.
Councillor Cushing?
Against.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett?
For.
Councillor Fredericks?
Against.
Councillor Grove-Jones?
For.
Councillor Heinrich?
Against.
Councillor Kershaw?
Against.
Councillor Lloyd?
Against.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle?
Against.
Councillor Stockton?
Against.
Councillor Varley?
Against.
And Councillor Yassimi?
Against.
So that's 10 against and 3 in favour.
Thank you. Philip, that has fallen.
It has indeed, Chairman. So we will be looking for an alternative proposition from members today. It will be for members to decide what alternatives they wish to bring forward. The two alternatives available to us are deferral of the application to negotiate around matters specified by members, or alternatively, if members feel that the proposals are acceptable, then we should define why those proposals are acceptable today, and we can vote on them for a contrary recommendation to that in the officer's report.
Right, now you've heard that, members. You either ask for a deferral, so this application can be reviewed with the officers, or you now have to put forward a planning reason why we should accept this application and go against the officer's recommendation. I need you to please to speak. There's a deathly hush, Philip.
I can't tell members at this stage what that option should be. Then there needs to be a proposition from the floor if members could be kind enough to take that forward.
May I
Brown
suggest?
has a hand raised.
Yeah, may I suggest we possibly could go? Oh, sorry, Andrew. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just for the purposes of clarity, if we propose deferral for consultation with planning officers, once that process is concluded, will the application be brought back to this committee for approval?
Through you, Chairman, there are different options available. It depends in many respects what members are deferring for. It would be helpful potentially if members are supportive of the principle to determine that they are supportive of the principle by voting as such in the meeting. And then you may, if you're not content with the matters of design, layout or detail, you may authorise delegated powers for officers to go forward with negotiations with the applicant for further discussion to resolve any outstanding issues you perceive. It is not necessary for the application to be brought back to committee. What concerns me, Chairman, is at the moment, officers' opinion is a matter of principle, which is saying no. And so we would be best to be guided by members on that matter of principle, if I can suggest. And if there are matters of outstanding detail that need to be reviewed, then officers can clearly be authorised to members' specification to negotiate with Mr. Cobbold on those issues.
Thank you. Right, back to you, members, please. I want a proposition from you, either to defer and for some reason, as Philip suggested, or oh, here we are, we're going again. Nigel, let's go with you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to ask Philip whether the fact that this was a brownfield site carries any weight, and if so, I'd like to propose that we approve this application based on the fact that it was previously built out as a brownfield site.
Again, through you, Chairman, the view that I've heard from members today certainly would indicate that you consider this to be previously developed land, colloquially brownfield land. We should call it previously developed land. That's what the framework calls it. As previously developed land, that gives a positive potential weight to the proposals. But as you've heard recently, when we considered the proposals for the nursing home at Kelling, that does not mean that it should be automatically approved. What you should consider also, members, is part of the debate that you've heard earlier in this discussion. I think what you have heard earlier was suggesting that there are local services available, that there are local facilities that could support a tourism use on this site. And I believe we would need to change the description of the proposals with Mr. Cobbold's agreement today for this to be a tourism proposal, because that is something that is clearly part of his concept for this development. So as a tourism proposal, then we would look for its accessibility to services and facilities and to tourism attractions. And you would consider either that it is acceptable on that basis and in conjunction with its previously developed status, and you would consider that the design is appropriate, and you would consider that the impact on local landscape and dark skies is not overridingly detrimental.
Thank you. Councillor Stockton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think there's two things here. The first one is that it seems to me deferral would be not sensible, particularly because the officers have already stated that it is, in their opinion, it is the principle that matters, not the details. So to defer may just give the applicant a lot more pain and a lot more time and get us nowhere. I would propose that we do accept the application on the basis that it is a tourism application, that there are facilities in the village of Binham, that it is on land that was previously developed. It was previously used as garages. So on those planning bases, I would propose that we accept, or that we recommend that the proposal is passed.
Thank you. Yes, Officer Rouse, then I'll go to you, Richard.
Chairman, it would be important to clarify with Mr. Cobbold that he's comfortable with that change of description, and that we will circulate draft conditions to Mr. Cobbold should members decide to agree with the principle. We will look for conditions which will restrict the use to tourism. We will look for suitable conditions relating to drainage, highways, parking. We will look for conditions relating to suitable materials and landscaping of the site, and also shielding in terms of the dark skies issues that are considered within the officer's report. So there would be a raft of conditions, members, that will be attached to any condition, any approval. If there are specific conditions that you believe are appropriate to any approval of this application, please include those or recommend them to us as we are considering this application now.
Andrew, you wish to speak again, and then I'll go to you, Richard, to finish.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll be very, very brief. I would support the proposal from Councillor Stockton. I think that the reasons Councillor Stockton have given provide a basis for approving this proposal. I don't think deferral would serve the best interests of either the planning authority or the applicant, and I feel confident that we can delegate the conditions to the Assistant Director for Planning, Mr. Olsen, to negotiate with the applicant. So I would propose that we move this forward immediately, and I'm happy to second that proposal, Madam Chair.
Right, so who is proposing to go with the members' decision to approve this application? Is that you, Councillor Stockton?
It was, Chairman, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed it was.
Right, so Councillor Stockton and then Councillor Brown will second. Councillor Kershaw, just to finish.
I have nothing to add now, thanks to Councillor Stockton and Councillor Brown. I concur with their thoughts. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'm a little unsure of because the original application did not mention that this was a holiday home. Are we legally allowed to proceed on this? Can I ask Noel? It seems to me we've changed the application.
I'll defer first to Officer Rosen's view.
Right.
Chairman, the proposals within the design statement considered this to be a tourism use. If Mr. Cobbold is in agreement that the application is described as such and is restricted by suitable conditions, I believe that we can proceed. The considerations in terms of plan policy are similar. The plan policy you heard from Darrell Watson earlier in this debate clearly alluded to consideration of the proposals in a similar vein to residential units. So I will be content that we could vote on that today, provided that the applicant is content with that description change and also restrictive conditions.
Thank you. Noel?
Yes, just to confirm, the council does have the power to agree a different description of development to more accurately reflect the application that has been made.
Thank you. Nigel, did you wish to speak, or were you?
Yes, please, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to recommend a condition on this application, but I would like to the council to, in their negotiations with the applicant, to consider renewable heating, renewable energy forms, that sort of thing, high standards of insulation, etc., etc. That would go a long way to me to sway my decision on this. Thank you.
Darrell, what would you say to this one? Can we condition this? Darrell? Yeah.
Oh yes, Chair. If we've got a policy basis for it, yes, I think that would be okay. Yes. Yeah. I'd have to check which policy it is. I think it's it might be SS6. I think so.
I think also, Chairman, we have control under the framework, the MPPF, that would support those conditions.
Right. Thank you. So at last, we have a proposer from Councillor Stockton and a seconder, Councillor Brown, to go with the members' decision to accept this application, to approve it, with the conditions have been outlined, and the Councillor Rowson coordinating with Mr. Cobbold about the layout, etc., and use of the property. Is that okay, Philip?
You've elevated me to councillor status. I
beg your pardon.
I am a simple, humble officer. If we could also speak and open the session for Mr. Cobbold to confirm that he's acceptable to that restriction and change of description. I know the council can change the description, but I would like to, for the sake of completeness, open the session and have Mr. Cobbold confirm that.
Mr. Cobbold.
Would it be inappropriate to ask at this stage for clarification on what those tourism conditions are, in summary, the sort of principal points of it, please?
I think,
through you, Chairman, I can help with that. We would look for limitations on not being a primary residential unit, and there may be limitations to numbers of days returning in the year. So something like 56 days is within our standard condition. Mr. Cobbold, I'll be very happy to agree those with you. We're looking at the matter of principle here for this not being a principal dwelling and for it being tourism, which seemed to echo what you were saying earlier.
I don't wish to hold you up any further, and I'm in complete accord with that.
Thank you. Can we go to the vote now, please?
Okay, yep. Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Cushing?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
Abstain.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett?
Against.
Councillor Fredericks?
For.
Councillor Grove-Jones?
Against.
Councillor Heinrich?
For.
Councillor Kershaw?
For.
Councillor Lloyd?
For.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle?
For.
Councillor Stockton?
For.
Councillor Varley?
For.
Councillor Yassimi?
For.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Cobbold and Mrs. Alford. You have the acceptance, and no doubt you will be in contact and discussions with Officer Rowson and Officer Watson. Thank you. Right, we now go to the last application, which is Ørsted on page 57, PF/20/2368. And Daryl is presenting again on behalf of Mr. Rubin, Officer Rubin.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This is an application for an agricultural building with associated hard standing to its front, access and landscaping on land off the east side of Long Road and to the south of a car park and toilets that serves visitors to the boardwalk. The building will be used for crop storage. Up to now, the applicants have been reliant on third-party storage, which is understood will no longer be available. As can be seen from the images in the presentation pack, it would be a typical modern agricultural building with coloured box profile steel cladding to the walls and roof. The concrete hard standing would adjoin its west side. The existing field access to Long Road would be upgraded. The proposals include a 4-metre deep landscape buffer of trees and hedges around the east, south and west sides of the site, with existing trees adjacent to the north boundary on adjoining land. There was a previous application which was withdrawn in September last year due to officer concerns regarding the landscape/visual impact. The current proposal has sought to address those concerns by reducing the length of the building, changing the colour of the wall cladding and increasing the landscaping. The applicants have considered other locations on the holding, but they feel this is the most suitable, having considered their operational needs against landscapes and highway constraints. As the report sets out, the parish council object and 7 objections have been received from the public. The Broads Authority also object for the reasons explained in the report. As this proposal is for an agricultural building, it is acceptable in principle in the area designated as countryside. The main issue, therefore, is the effect of the building on the landscape. Filtering will be provided by the row of trees on adjacent land to the north in views southwards along Long Lane and from the section of adjacent footpath that leads through to the Barton Broad boardwalk. These would also provide a backdrop in views from the north. The building would be most apparent in views westwards from Ørsted Road, within which very few buildings can currently be seen. The changes to the colour of the cladding and the landscaping proposed should mitigate this impact in the long term, which is acknowledged there would be some short-term effects. Conditions are recommended to secure a detailed landscaping scheme, its management and replacement of any failures, and these will be key in mitigating the impact of the building. The council's landscape officer has advised that with the amendments made and the mitigation proposed, they have no objection. Balancing this with the operational needs of the agricultural business, the proposal is considered acceptable in this respect. The other main issue are highway impacts, which have been raised in objections by the parish council, but the highway authority have no objection. Whilst Long Lane and surrounding roads are narrow, these are typical rural lanes which are agricultural vehicles typically and currently use. The recommendation is therefore for approval, subject to the conditions as set out on page 61 of the agenda. And that's the end of my presentation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Watson. Linda, anybody tipped up from the local parish?
No, Madam Chairman, we have nobody from the parish or any objectors, but we do have Mr. Plum supporting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Have you all members seen the supporting proposal from Mr. Plum? Has it been circulated to you? Should have come round this morning.
No, Madam Chairman, it wasn't circulated as it's only in case of emergency, in case he couldn't get on.
Right. So I'm the only one who's been privileged to see Mr. Plum's presentation. Mr. Plum, do you wish to speak?
Yes, please, Madam Chairman.
You have 3 minutes from the time you start.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to speak. We've heard a comprehensive, diligent and balanced report from the case officer. Thank you. I simply reiterate the following. We've worked proactively with the council and accounted for feedback with a view to finding an acceptable compromise within the framework of local and national policy that delivers a solution to the essential operational needs of the farm, whilst respecting the landscape it occupies and the people it might affect. We've made multiple design concessions to mitigate the landscape constraints. These include a reduction of 6 metres in length, equating to 250 tonnes of storage, a single roller shutter door only, extended the vertical cladding to cover the thrust walling at low level, and a moderated height limiting the size of trailers we can tip inside. We've also changed the colour of the vertical cladding to Van Dyke brown to be suitable and practical material, yet visually subdued in the landscape. Addressing need more specifically, an on-farm store will enable the farm to be self-sufficient, removing third-party dependence. The farm no longer has access to local storage and needs to store commodity off the combine at harvest. Without storage, harvest operations are significantly limited, with tractors and trailers required to travel long distances on road to collective stores, which is a sustainability issue in itself. The farm typically produces 800 tonnes of combinable crops, and yet the capacity of the new building, now reduced in size, is 750 tonnes. So it's a significant compromise on the applicant's behalf and will require some rotational readjustment, but demonstrates the importance of the store on farm. We have considered alternative sites. Whilst there's one alternative which may be preferable in landscape terms alone, it doesn't satisfy the operational needs of the holding as effectively and is more constrained in highway terms than the proposed site. Therefore, we've carefully considered but discounted it. The chosen site satisfies the operational needs of the unit, being centrally located on the holding and accessible with the most suitable highways location. As landscape mitigation, we propose to plant over 1,800 hedge plants and 360 trees delivered by planning condition. To summarise, short-term storage was previously provided by a third party. This storage is no longer available. There are no other agricultural buildings on the holding. Therefore, there is a clear and demonstrable need for a building being reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture. The landscape is characterised by agriculture. We would like to accommodate the needs of modern farming to enable the agricultural community, a significant custodian of the landscape we will enjoy, to continue to live and work in the space, move with the times and function effectively. So we hope the committee will support our application. Many thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Plum. I now go to the local member, Councillor Dixon. Are you there? There you
yes, yes, Madam Chairman, I am indeed here. I will keep my mentions brief. I am satisfied of the operational case as outlined by the applicant, although I haven't seen any convincing evidence as to why it has to be in this particularly sensitive site. So I think it's somewhat lightweight in that argument, and there's more to be considered with regard to other options that would be available on the land owned by the applicant. I don't really wish to add anything more to what's already been outlined by both the Broads Authority and the Parish Council, except to say that although we speak about landscape mitigation, we have to recognise that the proposed plantings will take decades to establish and mature, and of course the maintenance of them thereafter is another matter altogether. So I recognise that it is a relatively finely balanced matter, but I have to say I fully support the Broads Authority and the Parish Council in their objections. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. I now go to members. Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, an awful lot has been said. As you know, it's finely balanced, this one. It's a really strange one. You have to give the applicants some credit. They've reduced the size of the building, they've changed the doors, and they've changed the colour. And as Councillor Dixon has said, there is a problem with planting, and also it's in an area of quite outstanding beauty. You know, a lot of walkers go there, and I do accept the fact that the highways have no objections, although the parish council do, and there are also 7 letters of objection on pages 57 and 58. So I'm really waiting to see what other members say before I make my mind up on this one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I agree that there is perhaps a balance here, but I would like to remind members that it is most important that we support our local farmers, especially in the aftermath of Brexit. They are having a terrible time. And I would like to commend the applicant for the attempts to mitigate the impact. I agree that initially it was perhaps not what we would like, but I think one of these fairly typical agricultural barns is necessary, and it won't impact as much as it did. And also, I think it's very important to remind that we have declared a climate emergency, and by having this particular building on their own land, it will cut their carbon footprint by having to travel further to store their goods. So I am more than happy to propose that we go with the operator's recommendation, and it should be approved according to the conditions listed. Thank you.
Thank you, Angie. I've noted you down as proposer. Councillor Varley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know this area very well. Actually, I was walking down this road last week. It is a narrow country lane, which does incur a lot of traffic during summer because it's next to the boardwalk. There's a lot of residents which walk down here, doggy walkers and tourists, and I'm just having a hard time figuring how I'm going to vote on this. It is a finely balanced application, and of course we need to make provisions for our agricultural businesses. You know, they're going to the detrimental impacts of Brexit. We need to make sure that they are they are provided for. It states in the report, though, that it doesn't actually, it will not generate a significant volume of agricultural traffic. So there's another point there. So with all of that in mind, with the mitigating factors, the applicants have worked quite closely with the planning officers. It is certainly finely balanced, but I'm still not entirely sure which way I'm going to vote, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, we've got to accept that modern agriculture needs modern buildings. They're not going to be nice flint barns around a farmyard. The applicant will know best what suits his business model and his operational needs. And clearly put a lot of work into this. Yeah, it's a big modern building, but it's going to be shielded from the village of Ersted and from the car park by an existing tree belt. A good landscaping proposal there. Yes, they'll take time, but then depends to some extent on what species are used. We have to support farming. It is one of the fundamentals of local economy. I don't say it just because I grew up on a farm. I've got family interest long term there. With the way it's proposed and with the mitigation process, I don't see any real issue with this, and I'm happy to second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heinrich. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to say this committee spends a lot of time discussing the merits of protecting the countryside, But when I drive around North Norfolk, the most ugly buildings I notice in the countryside are indeed agricultural buildings. They have virtually no regard to spatial awareness whatsoever. I appreciate this applicant has worked hard with the council, changed colours and modified the size. However, I'm impressed that they managed. I was on board with the Broadland Authority's objection to this, but I can see that there's a robust planting scheme that's associated with it, and I am pleased to see that there will be some carbon reduction as a result of this application, and I hope the applicant uses this building to reduce his carbon footprint and that of the products that he sells. One condition, I'm not sure whether this is appropriate or not, but I've seen this on other applications where there's a planting plan that that is revisited for any plants that actually die, shrubs and trees, after a suitable time period has elapsed. Otherwise, we end up with a development like the the NDR, where nearly all the trees died and had to be replanted at a subsequent date at cost to the council. So is that something I can ask for as an additional condition on this, that the planting scheme is revisited to make sure that that shielding is existing in perpetuity? Thank you.
I think you'll find on page 61, Nigel, that this is already conditioned in as a replacement of new planting if it fails. I think it's normally included as a...
My apologies. I
That's all right.
I didn't notice that. Sorry,
it's
Chair.
normally included as a normal condition when planting is proposed. Councillor Yassimi.
Yes, there's not too much I want to add to this. Basically, yes, the applicant has made every effort to meet and make it look nice, and I think we may be seeing another swan on the horizon, who knows. It is balanced, but I agree with Councillor Fitztillett that we must support our farmers. I understand. My grandparents worked the land. I know it's nothing to do with planning, but that's the way it is, and I think we should approve this.
Has anybody else got anything to say? May I just add that this is an agricultural field with an entrance. So agricultural, even though it's a narrow lane, look at all our lanes round us now. Agricultural machinery has to pass up and down. I'm not saying it's comfortable all the time, but there have been agricultural machinery going into this field up till now. So, and I would like to see, obviously, if one thinks about it sensibly, a rather lovely farm building or shed or barn or whatever. Some of them are, but when you get to the basic farm building, it has to be, it's a utilitarian structure. Having said all that, we now have a proposer with Councillor Fitztillett and seconded by Councillor Heinrich to accept the officer's recommendation to approve this application with the conditions as set out on page 61. So can we go to the vote, please?
Yep, okay. Councillor Brown.
4.
Councillor Cushing.
4.
Councillor Fisher.
4.
Councillor Fitztillett.
4.
Councillor Fredericks.
4.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
4.
Councillor Heinrich.
4.
Councillor Kershaw.
4.
Councillor Lloyd.
4.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
4.
Councillor Stockton.
4.
Councillor Varley.
4.
And Councillor Yassimi.
4.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you. And Mr. Plum, you have your approval. Thank you to everybody. We now have the appeals section. Page 63. Philip, are you going to?
Thank you, Chairman. Through you and for members' benefit, I'd take the first section on appeals received as read, and I will be welcoming any questions or queries that we have on Hickling and Ryborough.
Anybody, any queries on these? Wishes to ask anything? No, doesn't seem to be, Philip. I think we need to go on to.
Okay, moving through then to inquiries and hearings in progress. We have 2 new hearings at Aylmerton and Bristol that have been received since the last agenda update.
Yeah.
Okay, and I have checked the Planning Inspectorate's website with relation to the Holt application for Gladman, which is the next item down, our public inquiry, and we have no decision issued as of yet, and we are looking for further updates from the Planning Inspectorate, who have been telling us that that decision is imminent. I can give you no more on that this morning, Chairman.
Thank you. If you'd like to carry on, I'm so sorry, I've got to go. Somebody's banging at my door.
Of course.
I won't be a second.
Cly, we have now received an application for revisions, remediation to the dwelling known as Arcady, and that application is going through the validation process and will be subject to circulation and publicity for the local community very shortly. I'm not seeing any hands raised. At Itteringham, we held a public inquiry last month and are expecting the outcome of that inquiry towards the end of April. That decision should be with us shortly. That related to the unauthorised use of an annex as a separate dwelling. Then finally, I can update at North Walsham for Bluebird container storage that we now have a current planning application received and that the appeal will be held in abeyance until that application is determined. Okay, no further questions. Then we have a raft of written representation appeals in hand, and I will leave you members to raise any queries that you have over any of those items on page 64 and the top of page 65. I would simply mention that we have very long-standing enforcement appeals for the archery site at Kelling, and we have long-standing enforcement appeals also for the telecoms enforcement case at Witherton. We are pursuing the dates for those decisions with the Planning Inspectorate, but it is a slow process on enforcement matters at the moment, Chairman.
I was going to say, if you could just give us some indication of how long the normal, is there such a thing as a normal appeal? Because we seem to be going on for months and months and months.
The performance statistics from the Planning Inspectorate are talking now of 12 months for an enforcement appeal to be determined.
Oh, God. Right. Okay.
I know that High Kelling has been longer than that, and I know that the telecoms proposals, members will recall that that was a decision issued by the District Council some considerable time ago, and that is now over 12 months also. So we will keep chipping away. We will keep reminding the Planning Inspectorate in a polite and professional way, and I can only tell you that we will keep applying that pressure. And I appreciate that our communities out there will be very disappointed that enforcement processes are being slowed by the inability of the Planning Inspectorate to move forward in a timely manner with their decision making.
Yes, thank you. Decisions, come on, let's get to the nice
decisions. You will see at Fakenham we have a householder case which has been dismissed at Salmon's Way. At Hickling we have a extension which has been dismissed also as a fast-tracked householder appeal. And again at Hickling, another householder appeal has been dismissed. We have an appeal allowed as a householder extension at Sculthorpe, and that was a difference of opinion between the inspector and the district council over the size and scale and design of the extension. Unfortunately, I'm afraid to say, members, that was one where the inspector was not persuaded of the council's case. It was an officer's decision, a delegated decision. For your benefit, Chairman, a question you raised in briefing.
Paul, you said you know Sculthorpe. Do you know where this is?
No, I said I don't know Sculthorpe at all, so I have no idea.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, you misunderstood me, I think, Chairman.
Oh, right.
It is tucked away on the former military quarters, and part of our concern really was the regularity of those buildings in that area.
Oh, right, okay. No court cases?
No.
Right, so then we go to no other urgent business has come before me. No need to exclude press and public. No private business as far as I know, or exempt matters arising. So that concludes today's meeting. Yes, Philip.
Just before we leave, Chairman, I think it's appropriate for members of our Development Committee to make you aware that we are supportive of remote meetings. Members will be aware that our last Development Committee that will be held remotely under the current regulations will be on the 6th of May. I will be keeping the Chairman up to date, and I will be asking for members of this committee to be kept up to date with the outcomes of challenges that have been made in relation to the government's stance, which will be that after the 7th of May, that all district council meetings should be held in person at the council's headquarters. I'm not sure, Noel, do you have anything more to add?
Just to add that in relation to the High Court challenge seeking a declaration that meetings could always have been held remotely under the legislation as it stood, and to which we will be returning after the 7th of May. The hearing date now is the 21st of April. Obviously, I can't guarantee when the judgment after that hearing will be issued, but information will be circulated, I'm sure, far and wide once that judgment is out to assess the impact of it.
Right, thank you. Andrew and Richard, did you both want to speak on this particular one?
Yes, if I may, Madam Chair. I was at the COVID Engagement Board meeting this morning, and with the other leaders of North Norfolk, the case comes up on the 27th of April in the High Court, and Robert Jenrick had commented that if the judicial review, if the case is lost by the government, they will not have to rewrite the primary law, but they will be able to reverse the decision, and in which case meetings will continue to be allowed remotely, and then the primary legislation will be tidied up around that later. So we're hoping that that might be the outcome of the case. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I must have got caught up in my mental gobbledygook there. Are you saying that on one hand the government is still sticking to their primary?
Yes, I mean, Rees-Mogg was in a meeting yesterday with MHCLG, and he absolutely stated that he was not going to move on this position. Robert Jenrick is come out with a different comment, so there may be a shift. It will be down to the judge, but if the judgment goes against the government, and there seems to be a swell in that direction, then they won't have to readdress the primary legislation. Meetings will be allowed to continue remotely, and then they will tidy up the primary legislation thereafter.
That could put us in a bit of a difficult situation, Noel, couldn't it, with regard to what we were discussing on Tuesday, with what's coming up very soon after.
If the High Court, if the application to the High Court is successful,
we're okay.
There would be no immediate need to change legislation in order to allow remote hearings to continue to be heard.
Right, thank God for that.
So fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, fingers crossed, and toes and everything else. Get your tarsals and metatarsals going, everybody. Andrew, yes, dear, what did you want to say?
Thank you. Yeah, can I just check when our next meeting is? Did I hear it was on the 6th of May, or did I get that wrong?
It is the 6th of May.
So that's the polling day, isn't it, for the county council elections? And
It
others?
is. Oh, that's a strange thing. Philip, are we going to? Doesn't make any difference to us, does it?
At this moment in time, Chairman and members, I don't know of how much business we will have for that meeting. I will contact you, Chairman, before the meeting and update you as we know more. We generally have an agenda together around about a fortnight before that meeting. I appreciate there are conflicts with local elections, and I'm fully understanding of that. Unfortunately, it is a diarised meeting, and it is something that ideally we should be able to cover as a council.
As a practical measure, Madam Chair, perhaps we should remind members to arrange substitutes if they're unable to attend that meeting because they are involved in the election on that particular day. It's just a pragmatic point that I'm making. Personally, I would prefer it to be deferred, but I understand that it probably can't be. And I make the point that by 4 o'clock today, when nominations close, we will be aware of which members on this committee, if any, are personally involved in the elections on that particular day. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, your comments are noted. I think, are we in the PERDA section now? Yes, we are. That's a bit difficult, isn't it? Does that affect us then, Noel, with regard to a meeting on the 6th?
Development Committee is a non-political consideration, so no, it doesn't.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank God for that. Right. Well, thank you, everybody. Philip, can you just keep on for a minute or two so I can have a quick word with you about my favourite topics? And au revoir to all.
Bye-bye all.